No one's business is the same as anyone else's. We're there at a point when it's very stressful and difficult. So you're dealing with a whole bunch of new complications and issues with each different job. They don't get us in when things are going well. Come in when things have gone poorly. That could be external or internal factors. Maybe they've made a poor decision. Yeah, I mean, at the moment, there's no shortage of job adverts. A lot of the companies out there are looking to, particularly in insolvency. If you have a qualification, great. That doesn't necessarily have to be an accounting background.
Yep.
It can be law. And as I say, it's meeting with them and having that conversation and seeing if you have the personality for the kind of work.
Hey, and welcome to another one of our Ways to Wealth podcasts. We have Keaton with us today. Please give us the TLDR on kind of what you're up to and how you got to be where you are.
Name's Keaton. I work for McDonald Vague partners. We're an insolvency firm. So naturally at this time of the cycle, we're quite busy. Prior to that, worked for the official assignee doing bankruptcy, and then, did a bit of building on the side before that and a bit of uni. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I'm going to dive into some of the work you do because I find it fascinating, especially like you say in this part of the cycle. Domestically and internationally, it's quite an interest of mine, and it must mean that you're doing a lot of interesting work. I think like that must be quite stimulating, some of the stuff that you're actually dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we deal with many different situations. As you can appreciate, no one's business is the same as anyone else's. So every new appointment or job you undertake it's a whole new set of, we're there at a point when it's very stressful and difficult. So you're dealing with a whole bunch of new complications and issues with each different job. There's none they don't get us in when things are going well. We come in when things have gone poorly. That could be external or internal factors. It may be something of their own. Maybe they've made a poor decision, or it's something a big contract has suddenly changed to them, no longer wants to work with them, and they've suddenly just lost all of their work because they relied too heavily on one party.
Right.
Or perhaps it's an accident's happened on site and they're now getting pursued by health and safety or something like that to get a claim against them. And we come in and try and help them through that process.
Yeah. You're the crisis management team of sorts.
Yeah, somewhat. And a lot of them won't pull through that, and we deal with that close down process, and some of them we can turn them around and send them off with potentially in a new entity or with a new owner, and the business is able to carry on.
Yeah, that's cool. What made you choose that line then, like to kind of go into that niche? Because that's a niche, right?
Oh, very much. It's a field in accounting, insolvency, but it's not where I originally started out. You do a paper or two on it at uni. Yeah. Or a paper, I think, is probably more like a lecture. Yeah. One single. As I say, prior to uni and during uni, I was a builder because my dad's a builder. Yeah. And then I left uni, didn't feel like sitting at a desk just yet. So I went and did building for a couple of years with him. Got sick of building through winter because that's really miserable work.
Rainy and cold.
And so I was applying for jobs, and I got a job with the official assignee doing bankruptcy, which it's the personal insolvency.
Right.
They deal with some liquidation work, but largely it's all personal. And then from there, I got to a point where I wasn't able to do my CA with them because I only had so many slots. Didn't have any available at that time to allocate to someone else. So I went externally with McDonald Vague, and that's how I got started with them doing corporate insolvency, and they went through the CA program with them.
And now you're a partner, right? So
yes. Yep.
That's and you're in the busy phase.
Yeah.
So what was that kind of, that's a huge question, but I don't know how long you're there specifically now, but it seems like you've progressed relatively quickly. I'm just making an assumption.
Yeah, I've been a partner for 2 and a bit years now. Yeah. I was with McDonald Vague for, I think I'm coming up to my 10th or 11th year. Before that I did bankruptcy for 3 or 4. Yeah. It's 15 years kind of in the industry.
Yeah. And then 10 or so years with them to build your way through the org. Yeah, you start as a junior, you do your study and what have you, come out the other side and then work your way up, and you've successfully done that. What do you think allowed you to do that? Because some people kind of maybe go off and they'll go and start their own boutique thing, or they'll kind of or is the path always for your kind of work to always make it to partner? That's like the goal?
No, not necessarily. You can always do insolvency with well, the big four, you previously could do it with all of them, but some of them now don't have an insolvency team.
Right.
So those are the ones we kind of grind it. But with the smaller practitioners, it kind of comes to a point where is there availability in a spot at the top to take on another partner, really?
Right.
That's not always the case. In my situation, there happened to be at the time.
Right. So there's a timing thing, and you've got to put yourself in that position for when that time arises, because it's not going to arise every day.
Yeah. And you need to be willing to, the kind of work we do is not the easiest kind of work. You're dealing with people in stressful times.
Yeah.
You're having that conversation, on day one, you're going in and talking with the staff and having that conversation you're probably going to let a lot of them go.
Right.
Or, you may keep some of them on, but you're not often going to keep the whole workforce when it comes to a situation where you're looking at downsizing or winding something down. So you are having those hard choices, and there doesn't necessarily have to be someone from an accounting background. It's different backgrounds who are able to deal with people. I work with people who have previously been lawyers. Some of them don't have a formal qualification, and it's a personality type to be able to talk to someone
during that stressful time.
Yeah.
How do you turn off? Like, it must be like you're inheriting. It's kind of like you're an uncle, but you're not. You're actually you're an uncle in crisis, right? In a sense, that's your role. You're kind of coming in to a business externally. You have to help them try and navigate this really tough phase. But then, in a sense, you get to put it down at night, especially as an individual, but as an organization in a way. How do you separate yourself from those stresses? Because it must be quite intense, and like you might kind of almost carry some of the weight on your shoulders yourself. And how do you kind of manage that? Because it's not like you get to have, some clients are really great and some are not great. Like if you look at like a tech agency building a product or something, perhaps, some of their clients are awesome and the whole thing is just great, like flowers and rainbows and just brilliant, feels great. And then some are not so great. But with you, your kind of line of work is relatively high stress and almost exclusively in a more negatively tainted kind of lens. So how do you separate yourself from the work when it's, I guess, of that nature?
You work with really good people around you, which is part of the reason I've been happy to stay in the business and doing the kind of work I do for so long. People I work with are great, and you can go back to the office and you can talk it out with them and through them. Generally, on most appointments, we'll have two liquidators. So one is the one who's kind of the primary, they're dealing with it very hands-on, and then the second one kind of has a knowledge of what's going on, but they're not dealing with the day-to-day.
Right.
So a lot of the time you'll be kicking ideas off them and that kind of thing. And it can be hard to leave it behind at the office, particularly when it's at the start of a new appointment. A lot's going on. It's very full on, and that could be sometimes you'll trade on for a couple of months, and it's a very busy kind of time, and you will do a longer day, but not every day is like that. So you will have times where it's a little bit quieter. We've just been through COVID and over those times, and it was very quiet because you had a lot of government subsidies, a lot of
people were able to keep going to kick the tire longer than they ultimately would have. Are you now seeing like a harder situation and it actually more difficult to unwind, or a longer duration of unwinding now because of that kind of dynamic?
I think you're just having more businesses that are perhaps things are catching up with them now. You've got the IRD, they're applying a huge amount of pressure on businesses right now, whereas over COVID, you could say the word COVID to the IRD and they'd give you all the space in the world. That's gone away now. They're taking a lot harder approach because they're sitting on a really large book of debts that they need to collect in.
Right.
So I think in June of last year, 24, they were sitting on $8 billion they needed to collect.
Wow. Yeah.
And the government said, well,
you need to do that. You need to go and get it.
It's kind of the role that you're there for.
Yeah.
Businesses are, everyone's meant to pay their share of tax.
Yeah.
Go get it. So they're taking a lot harder line with businesses, and people are feeling a lot more stressed because of that. What we are seeing, though, is businesses now tend to be a lot more complex than perhaps what they were 10 years ago. So you're getting a lot less of the easier kind of liquidations. The issues that are in them are a bit more chewy. They're a bit more tricky. Sometimes you'll get legal advice. You'll get other parties that are professionals to kind of assist you with that. So that is playing a part. But it is a bit, it's developed, but it's the whole industry and all businesses equally. And AI and technology all plays a part in how that works.
Yeah, I was speaking to a friend of mine that's a lawyer the other day, and he was going to say, because we were seeing so many liquidations happening now on a kind of weekly, monthly basis, etc. And a friend of ours who's a lawyer was making the comment that basically the IRD not doing anything, even though they know that a lot of businesses are insolvent, and they've been letting the problem maybe get bigger, maybe due to policy perhaps, and the stance and the situation. But the longer I guess you let it run, it's just harder to kind of deal with.
Yeah,
and I didn't really think of the fact that there could be a lot of people that are not paying to the IRD. Because of the line of work we're in, it's very low, like what we have to do, but it's kind of just a part of the process.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that. I was also surprised to hear that employers can be behind on their KiwiSaver.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the time the debts that you'll see are PAYE, which is your KiwiSaver and that kind of stuff. Then there's GST. And then normally if those two are in arrears, a lot of the time they won't have income tax in arrears because they're normally not making money.
Right.
So, but sometimes they will have.
So it's either income tax or struggling to do the basics, which might be PAYE and GST.
And then those are funds. The PAYE is funds they're meant to hold on trust for the employees to pay across. Yeah. They're not really the company's funds once they've paid those wages.
No.
So, but yeah, and the problem is when IRD leaves it for a long time, because realistically IRD it's a creditor in every business. They don't have a choice, because any business that operates is going to incur some form of income tax, PAYE or GST. The longer they leave it with that debt, it does allow that business to gather up other creditors, which perhaps they shouldn't have been allowed if they'd acted a bit prompter. So it is in everyone's interest that they act, swiftly.
In an appropriate time without making it arduous, I guess.
Yeah, not saying it's their fault, but it does drag other businesses down occasionally with the domino effect. When you fold one, it happens with the other creditors at the same time.
And they're higher, I imagine, in the...
Yeah, so IRD has a priority for PAYE and GST. So at the top, you've got liquidators' fees, then you've got the employees, and then you've got the IRD.
Right.
So they do have that preference. There is talk about changes to the Companies Act of limiting that IRD preference to 6 months of debt, which will mean they will have to act a bit faster, because after 6 months they'll lose that priority, which is good because, as I say, it gets them moving on pursuing those matters. And not because if you're thinking about a business trying to trade with someone else, someone who's not paying their tax is immediately getting a discount that's very hard to compete with. If you're not paying your staff's PAYE or your GST, the GST alone, that's 15% margin that another business who is paying their taxes will struggle to compete with when you're looking for work.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Yeah, interesting. So I guess, you've been partner for a couple of years now. What would success look like in 5 years? So if we were to fast forward 5 years from now, do you have a vision for what that looks like? Have you thought about it much?
Honestly, it's probably much the same. At the moment, it's kind of, you get into that middle phase where you're just kind of progressing to get, I don't mean like a middle phase of life where you're just grinding through, but, on your journey to financial independence, for want of a better term, you do a whole bunch of big changes where you try and cut your costs, you try and do your job and all that kind of stuff, and then you get into the middle where you're just grinding. Yeah. And grinding's not the correct word for it, because it's an enjoyable time and you can spend it.
Totally.
You're not eating noodles and beans every meal. But it is, you're just working through that process. And for us, that'll be just continuing doing what we're doing, really. We've, as I say, we've started into a cycle where it's recessionary. So it is, for a couple of years, there is going to be a lot of business for us. And it's just getting that in and dealing with it. And then what happens is things start to turn around. And then we get the tail where you kind of collect
more gradual.
It just kind of peters out after that. And you still get jobs on the way through, but you're just not as busy as you are now.
Yeah. Make hay while the sun shines.
That's absolutely it. Because, you do get appointments in non-recessions, but it's for different things rather than creditors. You'll have it for deceased estates. Perhaps they have a business and the executors don't know how to run the thing, so they appoint an insolvency practitioner. Or it's the shareholders have fallen out over something. Yeah. It's not necessarily creditor related, but they need to deal with the business in some way. So it's that the work changes and the way you get the appointments changes, but the work is still there.
Yeah, cool. Okay. And do you have any kind of views on I guess, parenting and generational wealth and trying to prepare our kids for a world that may look kind of different?
Yep. So, my children are still very young. They're 1.5 and a half.
Yes. Wow.
Yep. Yeah, so cool. It's full noise all the time. Running around like crazy. But look, at the moment, we're just in that kind of learning as you go along.
I remember that phase.
Yeah.
It's chill and it's awesome.
Yeah.
But tiring.
Yeah. And you have good days and you have bad days. I don't know that I am one to pass on try and,
How do you
wisdom on children?
Because you took a path, with your career.
Yep.
Do you think you're going to be? How do you think you're going to prepare those conversations of, I want to be this when I grow up.
Oh yeah.
And that looks kind of different now, and how we approach things, how we approach study might look very different. Have you had any thoughts of when they're a little bit older, I wonder have you thought about what good advice even looks like?
Honestly, not really.
No.
I mean, it's going to be different whether or not uni is still as valuable. And then it's the question of whether or not they even want to go and look at university. I mean, when we were going through it, university was like, you go, you do your study, and then you should go on to uni. And that was kind of the option you're given. But the trades are equally viable. My brother has his own mechanics garage in Gleneden, and he's got 6 staff. And he does well for himself. He left school at 6th form and went and became a mechanic.
Yeah.
And he started his own garage a couple of years after that.
Yeah.
And that's an equally valid path. There's nothing wrong with the trades. And honestly, I think my son, who's the 1.5-year-old, he's probably going to end up in the trades given
how he kind of operates.
Yeah. And that's cool. I have no problem with that. And if that's what he wants to do, it's, I suppose, dealing with it when
and
it comes
trying to help enable it, right?
Tell him how to get there.
Yeah.
And show him a way that he can do what he wants to do.
Yeah. Do you have grand visions of or do you, you being in the industry you're in, you probably think about succession and structuring and making sure that's all correct. A lot of people in New Zealand don't think about some of these things, right? Succession is not really something that's talked about much. Is that something that you are going to make sure you're prepared for? Or is that something that everyone should
yeah, absolutely. I think everyone needs to put thought into it. I mean, when you're setting up a business, there's a bunch of steps that you can take which make your life a heck of a lot easier at the end when you look against it. One of the other partners came out of his room on Friday, and he'd been dealing with a couple of shareholders who did not have a shareholders agreement.
Right.
And they were just at loggerheads, not seeing sense. And he's just like, why, if you're going to go into business with people, have a shareholder agreement. Don't rely on the Companies Act. It's, you go in with rose-tinted glasses and everything's great. You're best of friends. Yeah. And cool, it may be like that for a couple of years, but you're going to need to have some way of dealing with the problem if and when it arises.
Yeah.
So there's those little things that you can do at the start of setting up a company or a business to just make life way easier down the line. If you're chucking money into your business, have it all documented. Get the correct loan agreements and register a GSA. There's just simple things, but because it's so easy to set up a business, people just they just do it. It's you pay your fee to the company's office and you're away laughing. They don't worry about the paperwork. They'll deal with that later. But if they went out and they got professional advice, now that could be from lawyers, accountants. I'm not saying it's insolvency practitioners. We know what to do at the end. Yeah. But most lawyers and accountants know how to properly set up business at the start. And that's the same if they give you structure. Understand why you've been given that structure. Perhaps they set up a company with trusts and a couple of parent companies. There's a reason they've done it.
Yeah, totally.
We see a lot of businesses where they will just intermingle everything. And it just becomes a great big mess, and the structure, which is there to protect them, just doesn't work because they've not followed what they were meant to do.
Right.
They thought, okay, cool, it's done, tick, 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 I can go and do what I like. And they'll take from one bank account to pay another company's bank account over there, and they don't think that there's a reason behind why it is done that way and correctly documenting it. Yeah. They may save some money, but they're ultimately not saving money in the long run. Yeah, and totally. I imagine it's the same around tax advice. And if you had someone on about tax, they would tell you the exact same thing. Yeah. Get that advice so you can pay what you need to pay. Know how you need
to operate.
Yeah, but not more than you need to. But it does.
And that applies for individual families as well, right? Working out how, that kind of comes, I guess you get forced into some of these decisions at different milestones in your life. Like when you buy a house, you're kind of forced into taking some action if you have kids. But it's something that we had someone from Singapore who'd done a PhD about kind of, succession planning and kind of, I guess, family office structuring, which was quite interesting. And she was emigrating here. Oh, yeah. And she mentioned she got here and she was quite shocked at the level of which, or the lack of any sort of succession planning had been really done here, and how it was a bit nascent. So nascent so that she even, I guess, thought that maybe the commercial opportunity here wasn't even that viable because there wasn't maybe an appetite for it perhaps at this stage. Yeah,
people take that she'll be right attitude to those kind of things. And you think there's a whole generation of people who are a little bit older now, for want of a better term, baby boomers effectively. A lot of them work for themselves.
Yes.
And for a lot of them, their nest egg is their business that they've been working
there's no one to buy it.
Yeah, that's the problem. I saw a stat the other day, don't know whether or not it's true, but 1 in 10 will actually sell it and get the money they need. A lot of the other ones, they don't. So their options are close it down, sell all the assets.
I have a real interest in that space because I like looking at kind of undervalued assets. I mean, I would actually have an interest in looking at companies in liquidation and seeing assets within those sort of scenarios in the future if I had some capacity for it. I don't. But, you know, the reason my interest is quite high is because I think that there's a lot of businesses in that, what you've just described, in that kind of category where the multiples are really cheap on the businesses because there's not that much value there, or it's a depressed value because there's a lack of succession and planning and modernization because of that kind of approach, which means that, like you say, I mean, a lot of people are just going to have to wind businesses down.
Very much.
If they don't basically kind of modernize and take themselves out of those critical roles that enable the valuation to go up.
They do have that key man issue. Whereas if they leave, they were a large part of the business.
Yeah. So I'm super interested in that because that's something that technology can solve. That is something that young entrepreneurs can solve if given the opportunity. But a lot of the people that would be the natural buyers are probably not buying, not in the position to buy. So those baby boomer businesses are going to have to think about, okay, can I sell it? Can I do a management buyout maybe? Is it also, I guess, a path that they'd probably would be the easiest path? And can I get myself out of the business so that I can at least live on the income through dividends in the future? I think that's kind of the decisions that people are trying to work out right now. And that you probably have a disproportionate amount of small businesses in New Zealand that are in that situation right this second.
Yeah, very much so. And for people to want to invest in businesses, a lot of them are still working a PAYE job.
Yeah.
And they may have some money that they want to invest on the side, but a lot of those businesses, they require a very hands-on approach. They're not just, you can put a manager in there and the manager will do an excellent job. They're not being designed or set up like that. Yeah. So it does make it hard to, people say, oh, if you can't afford a house anymore, buy a business. And a lot of them go and they end up in doing that with hospitality, but hospitality is a very hard industry.
Yeah.
There's not huge margins in it.
No.
And
and especially now it's kind of been hollowed out a bit given the dynamics from COVID, and it hasn't really come back like it was, right? I think we're in a very different environment in hospitality and leisure than what we were before the pandemic. I think that's going to take longer to heal potentially and get back to a vibrant kind of space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it depends where it is in the city as well. I mean, you see the CBD is still quieter than what it was over COVID, and you see the exact same thing down in Wellington and a lot of the other CBDs because the office workers haven't yet fully come back. A lot of them have, but not 5 days a week.
No.
So you've still got that. But some of the region, the outlier cities, the CBD central ring, they're doing okay because they've got residential as well around them.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. Totally. Well, I look forward to seeing business come back a little bit and how this unfolds in terms of that baby boomer space. I think it's actually something that's not really being talked about.
Yeah. I mean, it's for a lot of
come to roost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very quickly over the next 10 years.
And for a lot of time, they were buying the businesses. One wanted to expand his workflow, but he only had retirement in 5 years. The other guy was retiring, so he'd buy him. You've not solved the problem. It's just one baby boomer business has gotten a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
So, and it will be a problem that is going to need to be dealt with. And that will be, after this recession has kind of run its course, there's still some of the jobs we see during the non-recessionary times.
Well, these also could be, it also could be an opportune moment for a good operator or a number of good operators to be looking out, because late cycle in a recession. So when people are like, oh, I've got 5 years to go, but you know what? Like, I think now's the, people kind of may be like, I'm tired. Last couple of years have been hard. I'm actually willing to just get some liquidity and pass the baton on. Yep. So it could end up being a great opportunity for people to find value and find new opportunities for themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's late cycle, people are not joyous about the situation perhaps, and that's kind of often the way the times start looking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But you have to get those owners to the point where they'll set the price, which is what they think they need to either retire or to pay off all their debts. That's not really what the business is worth, though.
Yes.
So they need to go through that process themselves to understand that, you've got a business worth 200, you're not going to get 500 for it.
Yeah. And do you find you go through that situation with these owners a lot of times when it can be salvaged or sold?
Yeah.
And then there's often a big disconnect between value, the value they want, and the value that the business is. And is it often is there a number, is it often they try and think, or they think it's 2 times more on average valuable than it is? Or
set number. I mean, what we do with them is we'll sit them down and say, have you looked at selling a business? Oh, you've got it listed with the business broker,
right?
Whichever one that ends up being, for $350. We're like, okay, cool. Have you looked at what it's going to look like if you don't sell it? Because you've been listed for several months now and you've not had any joy. Oh, no, not really. So we then go through the process of setting out, look, if you end up in liquidation because you can't sell your business, you wind it down or whatever it is, at auction, your asset's going to be worth X, Y, Z. And a lot of the time it's
pennies on the dollar.
Cents on the dollar, yeah.
Yeah, cents,
yeah. So say 350, you say, look, this is at auction, you'll be looking at 50. Plus you've got auctioneer's commission, all that kind of stuff. So maybe your 350s, that offer you received for 200
is actually legit.
Yeah. One, you get rid of the lease, which normally they have a term to run and there'll be a personal guarantee under that.
Yeah.
And the business carries on, so your staff have a job moving forward. And a lot of the time, you'll have a job as well for a set amount of time where you do handover.
Yeah.
That could be 6 months, a year, whatever the new owner feels will help them get to the point where they're able to take it over and deal with what that person was originally dealing with.
Yeah.
And it does allow the business to keep going, which is what you want.
Yeah, totally. Oh, super interesting. So if someone was looking to get into the into your field, how do I describe it? In the crisis field, what would we say it is?
Well, it's insolvency.
Insolvency in general. What would be a good path? And I guess give us some insight from your experience on being with a more boutique firm than one of the big four, because I think a lot of the decisions people make is around big four or a smaller firm.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, there's no shortage of job adverts. A lot of the companies out there are looking to hire, particularly in insolvency, and that can be the insolvency-related fields as well. So it could be the OA with bankruptcy, or it could be the banks and their internal teams and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So there are a number of, over COVID and that kind of stuff, we were seeing one job application on Seek every couple of days or 2 or whatever it was. Now we're seeing 20 a day.
Right.
And they're not all directly insolvency hands-on insolvency manager kind of roles, but they have a component of insolvency that may be working for a credit management team.
Right.
Or something like that for Fletcher's dealing with their clients who are behind.
Yes.
There's all those kind of works. But if someone wants to get into it, it's really just, I suppose, applying. If you have a qualification, great. That doesn't necessarily have to be an accounting background. It can be law. And as I say, it's meeting with them and having that conversation and seeing if you have the personality for the kind of work.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
That's all right.
Look forward to hearing from you again when maybe the cycle's a bit further along.
Yeah, I can hopefully bring some better news that not everyone's failing, but
yes, absolutely. Great. Cheers. Thank you.